Hey everyone, welcome to my guide on spiritual creatures. There are three types of spiritual creatures: spiritual mages, spiritual warriors, and spiritual rangers, and you can only deal damage to the ones you have the Slayer requirement for. These monsters are very simple. As long as you use the correct protection prayer, you can reduce their damage to 0. The only exception are for the ones in the Ancient Prison, where each of them have an additional special attack. In the Ancient Prison, the Mager uses Ancients, which can all be negated with Anti-Poison and Super Restores. The Warrior can randomly summon 4 smoke clouds, while the Ranger can fire an exploding orange arrow at the player's tile. Both of these attacks are easy to dodge, and I show examples of how to dodge it later in the video. We're now going over location info. You can see in the middle here I wrote down what god items you need equipped to make all monsters unaggressive in that section. For the God Wars Dungeon Lobby, we need to equip an Armadil, Bandos, Saradomin, and Zamorak item. For the Ancient Prison, you need to wear a Zaros item. For the Wilderness God Wars Dungeon, you need an Armadil, Bandos, Saradomin, and Zamorak item. To the right, I wrote down the requirements needed in order to access that location. The Ancient Prison requires a multitude of 70 stats and a frozen key, which is obtained by killing all 4 God Wars bosses. Before we move on to the next section, write down the location you're using, the type of spiritual creature you are killing, and the god items required for your armor setup. Alright, now let's jump into armor setups. We'll test out 3 hypothetical setups. For the God Wars Dungeon Lobby Spiritual Mages, ranged is the best DPS, but melee is a pretty close second. Magic is not recommended because of the Spiritual Mage's high magic defense. Against Spiritual Warriors, ranged and melee setups are great, but magic becomes much more viable. Against the Spiritual Ranger, all 3 setups are viable, but overall, using ranged against any spiritual creature in the God Wars Dungeon Lobby is the fastest DPS. So here are alternatives for a ranged setup. You can be as creative as you want with your setup. As long as you're wearing one for each god, you're good to go. This also applies to a melee setup. Personally, I would focus on god items with strength bonus like Bandos or Inquisitor, but you have a lot of options when it comes to god items you can equip, and here are the alternatives for a magic setup. Personally, I would wear an Ancestral or Blue Moon body and legs for its magic bonus, and the rest you can fill with god items. Now going over the Ancient Prison Spiritual Mages, you can see even with their 200% fire weakness and a maxed magic setup with Fire Surge, ranged is the best DPS. Against the Spiritual Warrior, magic with a fire spell gives insane DPS. Against the Spiritual Ranger, ranged and melee are almost neck and neck. I'd prefer ranged because there is less running, but melee is cheaper because you don't have to pay for ammo. So here are the alternatives for a ranged setup. You only have to wear 1 Zaros item, then fill the rest with good ranged gear. I also included the other gods for running through the lobby. You can put them in your inventory as a switch, or you can choose not to bring them and tank the combat triangle for about 10 seconds as you run to the prison. This also applies to a melee setup. You only need to wear 1 Zaros item and the rest strength gear. It's up to you if you want to bring the 4 gods in your inventory. And here is a magic setup. You only need to wear 1 Zaros item and the rest magic damage gear. It's up to you if you want to bring the 4 gods in your inventory. And here are the setups for the Wilderness God Wars Dungeon. I highly recommend reading all the notes underneath to prepare yourself. I've included the amount I'm risking in armor and the amount I'm risking in resources. If you're uncomfortable with the risk, adjust it for cheaper armor or bring less resources and do multiple trips. Against the Spiritual Mage, you can see ranged is the best DPS, but melee is a close second. Against the Spiritual Warrior, it's pretty much a 3-way tie. And against the Spiritual Ranger, it's just like the Warrior, all 3 setups are good to use. So here are alternatives for a Wilderness range setup. Focus on 3 valuables first, preferably items that are also affiliated with a god, then fill in the rest with god items, then the rest welfare. If you're using Wilderness weapons, don't fill it with more than 2,000 Revenant Ether. Here are alternatives for a Wilderness melee setup. Normal weapons are fine, but you can also use Wilderness weapons if you're willing to risk around 400k in Revenant Ether if you get PK'd. Here are alternatives for a Wilderness magic setup. Powered staffs not only give the highest DPS, but if you get PK'd, you keep all of the resources inside the weapon. The only issue with powered staffs is that you get almost no magic XP. All of these gear setups were pulled straight from the NoBS OSRS calculator, a tool which allows you to test any gear combo in seconds. It has over 10,000 gear options to choose from, including their prices, their stats, as well as an interface that lets you see costs and DPS outputs faster than any calculator that's out there. If you're interested in trying it out, click the link in the description box below to find out more. We're now going over each location. When you choose your travel method, Place the teleport items in your inventory, and you can also use the timestamps in the video player to skip to your location. We'll start with the God Wars Dungeon Lobby in Ancient Prison. If this is your first time, there are 2 things you need to know. First, there are 5 thrower trolls at the north side of the mountain that throw rocks and hit 6s rapidly. Turn on protect missiles as you pass them. Second, you must speak to the Dying Knight just west of the crevice. He'll give you some notes which you can destroy, then use a rope on the crevice to climb down. When you climb down, the lobby spiritual creatures are located in the southeast section. To get to the ancient prison, there is a shortcut on the southern wall which takes you there. The best teleport is using a Gommel's Hilt, passing the agility obstacle, and head north. You can also use a Trollheim teleport. Take this path, use protect missiles here, then head north. You can also use a Troll Stronghold portal or Stony Basalt, then run past the thrower trolls. So here are some example inventory setups. These are for the God Wars Dungeon Lobby. Anything written in yellow is an optional item. I've also included the inventory examples for the Ancient Prison. Here are the quick prayer examples. These are for the lobby. Feel free to adjust any of them to your preference. And here is how I would set up my quick prayers for the Ancient Prison. So here is the in-game example for the God Wars Dungeon Lobby and Ancient Prison. I highly recommend switching on NPC indicators in Rune Light. Make sure to have highlight hull checkmarked and type in the spiritual creature you're killing. Anyways, we'll start from the top of Trollheim Mountain. That way I can show you how I pass the thrower trolls. Turn on protect missiles when you round the bend. Then run north into the passageway. Let's go ahead and push the boulder, which requires 60 strength. Then turn on protect melee and run north. Go ahead and climb down. If you can't climb down, make sure to speak to the Dying Knight located just west of the entrance. Once we're in the lobby, we'll head southeast and kill any spiritual creature whose hull is highlighted. Drink your stat boosting potions, turn on your quick prayers, have auto retaliate on, and just watch your prayer points for when they get low. So here is the example for the Ancient Prison. Before going down, we can equip our God switches, then head down. Then we're going to head south and open the frozen door. Then open the door once more. And now we're in the Ancient Prison. You can go ahead and wield back your equipment, and you're also free to drop your cheap god items to save inventory. So killing the spiritual mage is pretty simple. Just drink your stat boosting potions, drink your anti-poison, turn on your quick prayers, have auto retaliate on, and attack the spiritual mage. Here is how to kill the spiritual warrior. It uses melee, so we use protect melee. When it does its smoke cloud special, walk back a few tiles to dodge it. Here is how to kill the spiritual ranger. It uses ranged, so we use protect missiles. When it does its special, its arrow will turn orange. Just walk a tile away to dodge the blast. Now let's go over the Wilderness God Wars dungeon. The entrance can be found here, and once you enter, you can take either of the tunnels to enter the main area. The fastest way to get here is by using a Wilderness Obelisk if you have the Hard Wilderness Diary complete. Another fast way is using a Cemetery Teleport and running east. You can also use a Dariak Teleport, or you can use a Burning Amulet to Bandit Camp and run north. So here are some example inventory setups. Anything in yellow is an optional item you can bring. And here is how I would set up my quick prayers, and feel free to adjust them to your preference. So here is the in-game example for the Wilderness God Wars dungeon. I highly recommend switching on NPC indicators in Rune Light. Make sure to have highlight hull checkmarked and type in the spiritual creature you're killing. So here I'm just passing the agility obstacle, then entering the crevice. Then I like to run all the way southwest to kill spiritual creatures. But drink your stat boosting potions, turn your prayers on manually, and attack the spiritual creature with auto retaliate on. If we see any PKers on our minimap, have your mouse hovered over your one-click teleport to tele out immediately. If you're teleblocked, turn on your quick prayers, one tick, eat your angler, brew, and karamwan, and run back out the dungeon. If you gain a gap and the PKer isn't attacking you, log out. And that's everything. Feel free to check out my other guides and let me know what monsters you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching.